So, George, thank you so much for joining me today. It's very good to be with you again on Skype. And this time we're drinking coffee, though.
Yes, unfortunately, we're not on the alcohol. Although at this time of the day, perhaps alcohol would not be the most appropriate to enjoy and drink. But I have got my latte. I'm trying to imagine that I'm in Fitz Cafe. I'm sure we're sort of replicating it.
Sort of, yeah. I should probably explain that this is a reference, of course, to Gin with George, which was a conversation we had recently. Do you want to tell us a bit about what Gin with George is?
Oh yes. Well, what is Gin with George not? It's a podcast that I've done since lockdown. My aim really is to try and bring people together, but more just I've got a random few guests, and it's a very casual affair where I just chat with guests what they're doing in lockdown. It's basically a public private conversation, if that makes sense.
Okay, possibly. I'm sure it does to some people somewhere. So in some ways, I'm slightly turning the tables on you today, George, in that you mentioned there you're asking people what they're getting up to in lockdown. And how things are going. So what are you up to, George? What's your lockdown life looking like?
It's very busy, that's for sure, which is an odd thing. I know a lot of people think, God, how can you be busy in lockdown? Of course, I have work. I've got one exam and a portfolio of essays to put together, which actually in itself isn't masses to do, but it's still, if you put the dedication and time in, then hopefully I'll get a decent result. So
well done, George. Your supervisor may be watching this video, so do be aware. Carry on.
I know I had to sort of put that one in first. But also I've been doing Chat with George, which has also been quite a long process. So I've been interviewing some important guests like Andrew Davies, who's the former Welsh Conservative leader in the Assembly in Wales. I've also been speaking to Richard Graham, who's the chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on China. So I've had some really interesting conversations. Roger Mosey, who's the former BBC head of news. So I've been doing a lot of that.
And whereabouts in the country are you? What's your kind of location like? I mean, you don't have to tell us your address, but what's the situation like where you are?
I'm on a farm, so I'm very lucky, and it does feel a little bit distant from the realities of the coronavirus. It's only when you enter the towns that you realise that this is all going on, or if you switch on the news, of course. Otherwise, it doesn't feel much different from going back home after a term at Cambridge. Life here is pretty isolated anyway, so you sort of. I've been in training for 18 years. I've been waiting for this moment when everyone else can join me in this sort of form of isolation.
I'm going to ask the question. Is there any messages you want to send to the good people of Fitzwilliam College?
Stay in contact. That's my big message to everyone, I think, is make sure you are staying in contact with people, because if it's not for you, at least it's for others. Everyone likes to talk to one another. I think it's very easy for some, I think, certainly, to take this isolation as almost a moment where they can just go into their shells and hide away. Others, of course, are very upset that they can't meet other people, and are trying their best to keep in contact. But I think we all have a responsibility, whether we're introverts, extroverts, or simply just going around our daily lives. We need to keep in contact with one another, because some of us, some people will be very lonely. Even if they've got family at home, they may still feel inside rather alone.
I mean, that's really interesting, actually, both in terms of your experience growing up feeling somewhat isolated and perhaps realizing the value of social contact, and then also the sense in which you are practicing what you preach. And it's brilliant what you're doing in terms of making radio, making podcasts, finding ways to keep people in contact, and also reaching out and engaging with people who perhaps don't have enough contact, or who may be feeling isolated. So I think it's brilliant what you're doing, and thank you so much for that, and all the best with the work that you have to do to get that essay done, and these radio shows and podcasts and whatnot. And thanks so much for being on this show with me.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you for having me.